Yes, okay, recording started. So welcome to everyone who joined. My name is Noémie Ott. I'm the chair of the Young YEFC, and I'm very happy there are so many people who participate to the grant writing. We have three people with us today to discuss the grant writing, which is Emilio, who works as an associate professor at the University of Oxford, Santiago, that work as associate professor at Delft University of Technology, and Yolanda, that is chair of the Create Correct program. We co-organize this event with them, but she's also associate professor at Western Ontario University. And the aim of today is not to give you or not to discuss specific call or not to give you a magic formula, because it's very difficult because it's a very complicated theme. But we would like to provide you kind of a landscape about the grant opportunity, as well to show you that there are actually different variety, like there are a lot of possibilities. And you will see as well that there are a lot of interdependency between the grant opportunity and as well where you are, where you're located, what is your background and career state. So, and also like we hope, I hope that we can show you the importance of discussion with people, like of exchanging. It's not kind of a narrow process where you always do the same. It's very important to discuss with basically your network. Or if you do not have network, just pick random people on LinkedIn. Most of the time they will help you, believe me. Based on that, we will, and based on the answers that you provided when you register, we set kind of a few generic questions, and that will be the part that will be recorded during this webinar. And then we will open the floor for Q&A. We'll see it will last between 1 and 1.5 hours. Please feel free to, if you have some question at some point, just unmute yourself. You can ask as well. I will ask as moderator. And I thought that we can start maybe by all our guests making a short statement about how did they start their journey as an academic or on their grant writing journey. So I don't know, Yolanda, do you want to start?
Yes, I can do that. Yeah, so hello, I'm Yolanda Hedberg. So I come from Germany and I was working 13 years in Sweden. I'm now in Canada. When I started, I wrote undergraduate grants, like scholarships for my undergraduate studies, as well as a conference in the USA that I got financed via an undergraduate grant in Germany. So very early I started, and yeah, those opportunities just came up during that time, and I was able to apply. Yes, and also a little bit later, like when I was PhD student, it was travel grants. I also started early with industry grants because they didn't have a requirement to be a professor or postdoc. So I started with that already when I was a PhD student. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Emilio, do you want to keep on?
Sure. Thank you for organizing this, Noémie, and very nice meeting you all. As you heard, my name is Emilio. I'm an associate professor at the University of Oxford. I'm originally from Spain, and I can't remember what was the first grant that I wrote. I probably started writing some small travel grants, things along those lines. Then I guess the most significant that I remember were postdoc fellowships. So I wrote, I remember, a Marie Curie postdoctoral fellowship, and then an 1851 research fellowship, which is a UK-based scheme. And then, of course, as an academic, grant writing is part of my daily basis. I think I've secured over 7 million as a PI in the past 5 years, applying to various schemes such as ERC and others. So I'll be happy to discuss those, of course. Thank you.
Good. Santiago, your turn.
Yes. Well, I think it's a bit of a mixed experience from my part. I'm also from Spain, but I did start writing proposals already when I wanted to do a PhD. And I have done that experience, and doing the PhD on a grant I did not write. And then started co-writing while finishing my PhD, co-writing proposals with my supervisor in an unofficial way. So that was not expected. but then you could do it. And then I gained some experience there. Then I moved to another project not written by me in another place. So that's how I came to Delft. And then I wrote at some point a personal grant in a national program, and that opened a lot of doors afterwards, because that one I got, and then that led to other type of grants that are more in teams and topic related. So a bit of experience on all levels.
So when we prepare for the event, we saw that, I don't know if the audience is aware, but there are different type of grant you can apply to. And also, depending on your career stage, you will not apply to the same grant. So you have, if I remain very generic, you have project-based grant, you have personal grant, and then you have industry-based grant. This depends as well on the country where you're located. But if you were, because most of the people who register to the webinar are actually early career, very early. Most of them were kind of PhD or very short after the PhD, and they had never written a grant. So what will be your suggestion, or how do you find a grant where you can apply to, or what will be your suggestion? Where will you start if you have zero experience and you want to start with a grant writing?
I don't know who wants to start, but I can shoot first.
Go for it.
I think this is very interactive session anyway. So okay. So at the beginning, I think that it's not logic to think about writing or leading in the writing of a collaborative grant, and also not an directly industry funded grant, for two different reasons. The one is the contacts in terms of the collaborative grants. And the second one, from an industry perspective, is that you need to have built already quite a reputation to be able to opt to these bilateral relationships with industry. So I think starting with personal grants is the way to go at early stage, and maybe even small grants during your PhD can train you in this writing of proposals. And by small grants, we know the ones from the Young YEFC, the travel awards, these kind of things are already quite a good initial training. I start here, so maybe Emilio and Yolanda want to add things.
Exactly. One of the two there.
Maybe I can continue. So I disagree a little bit about the industry grants, because I wrote my first industry quotations during like the last years of my PhD. And the reason was that I already had a number of industry projects running through the PhD. So I had built up all that relationship. I knew I helped my supervisor to write those, right? So I knew exactly what is required. I had the contacts with them. It was kind of easy. And this is maybe, so your supervisor or your group is, of course, the main source to start with. Ask colleagues and peers. Also check other people that are in your field, check their papers and see how they were funded. That is a very nice way to find new small foundations, for example, that might fund your type of research. There are ask around for colleagues. Of course, there are websites. Sometimes you are in a good university that provides you with like a research office that has newsletters and so on, and they can give you resources. It is a little bit harder to shoot in the wild, like to find something that none of your peers or colleagues has experience with. So it's always better to start with your network.
Yeah, I think I agree with, of course, everything that has been said. I think starting to discuss this with your supervisor, with your PI, I think that would be the best approach. Your supervisor will tell you whether it's a good idea to write a grant now, whether you should wait a bit. I think sometimes also people, you mentioned that a lot of the participants on this meeting are PhD students. Just because grants are such an important feature of academic life doesn't mean that you need to be obsessed about grant writing so early in your career. You know, PhD is a time to do research, to achieve things by yourself. So this is the only thing I'll add. I think in general, I mean, ideally, this shouldn't be the case. Ideally, every time we submit a grant, we should be reviewed by experts in our topic, and we should get a fair review and so on. This not always happens, and often you get evaluated by people who maybe don't know much about you, and often this leads to some sort of unconscious bias. And this unconscious bias could operate in many ways, but one way it operates is that people will look at your profile and think whether your grant is good or not, your proposal is good or not, based on whether your profile is good or not. This doesn't happen all the time, luckily, but sometimes it happens. So I think, having a strong profile is important because it shows that you can deliver high quality research, but also it's important in order to increase the success of your grant application. So I think if I were to be a PhD student now, things I would be more worried about is not, learn how to do the grant writing quick. That's, eventually everyone gets there, but more trying to tick those boxes that will make your profile very strong. So if you can, you need to have international mobility. You shouldn't stay all your life in the same place. You shouldn't stay all your life with a supervisor. You need to show that you can deliver in multiple places. If you can work at a very prestigious institution, that would be good. A prestigious group is also very important, but sometimes people evaluating you are not familiar with the top groups within your discipline. So if you can go to a top institution, that's also very helpful. Anything that you can do, small grants, awards, anything that you can do, important and high quality research, anything you can do to raise your profile is going to be helpful through the rest of your life. And sometimes I discuss with colleagues who are now maybe mid or early career academics, and they feel that maybe their personal circumstances are such that they cannot really move that much around. They maybe have a family and other reasons, and they think, oh, I wish someone had told me that, international mobility was important. So I think now that you are all young or early career and you have maybe less constraints, it's a good time to think about that. Move around, work with top people, expand your network. Those things are important. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
Also, like program where you can do during your PhD some exchange, which could be as well if you cannot afford, because from family or from like personal circumstance, you cannot go for a postdoc abroad, or like kind of you cannot move. You could do this short exchange, which as well are very beneficial for your career. So to find a grant, so there are different possibilities. Also, I will say, look at your funding agency in your country, because it's really from one country to another, it's very different. And that will as well basically tell you a bit where you can apply. Also check journals have some travel grants, and the National Society also have some travel grant in case, and awards. So that could be as well a good point to start.
Maybe Noémie, the way I would see it is nowadays there are a lot of small personal grants.
Yeah.
And by a small is that because I suppose that's one of the questions that most of the people that want to follow academia think about themselves. I guess that the first idea is then to get one of these super big shots of grants, personal grants, like those coming from the European Union or even national. And maybe the strategy needs to start a bit early on with those small grants. That was my comment. Nowadays, it's very different than when we started. It's simply very different. So even if our experience is there, the situation now is a bit different. I think that the fact that you can look at grants that are at your country, but also at other countries for personal mobility grants, for instance, these are pretty interesting. And I think that they should be one of the first ways to look at while you're doing your PhD. And I give the example of DFG. DFG in Germany, they have these type of grants for people from other countries to go to Germany. But also as I said, the Young YEFC has its own grants to allow mobility, and then you still need to write a small proposal. So it's a good way to train yourself and to already put in your curriculum that you have applied and maybe acquired a grant. Now, why do I say this maybe acquired grant? Is because there is one factor that we always forget. We always like to say, wow, yeah, I wrote it, the grant, fantastic, super cool, best team ever. Yeah, best idea ever also. But yeah, also best luck ever. And the luck has a different type of levels, right? The luck is that maybe in that proposal round, your grant was the best. Maybe it was the only one. Maybe you were very lucky and the committee that evaluated your proposal really liked you. And all these things in the same way can be the other way around. Maybe you were unlucky and then one of the committee members doesn't like you. Or maybe there were simply proposals that were way better than yours, right? So the luck factor is there. We don't like to mention it, but it's very important. The only thing it's on your control is to try to make the best proposal possible.
Yes. And then we go to the actually second point that we had was ideation. So how do you start? Like, do you start from the idea or do you start from actually the call? So there as well, when we prepared, we actually saw that depending on which call you apply to or which type of grant you apply to, there are different paths to take. Input there?
Yolanda, you start this time.
Yeah, I can start. So I would say for specific or industry calls, you always need to read the call first before you even start to have an idea, because it's so common that you completely shoot beside it, right? So it's very important for like specific calls, anything to do with specific areas of industry or specific research areas in collaboration with industry or associations. Always read the call first before you even think about it. And for personal grants or travel grants or something, it's good to have an idea. It's good to have like a number of ideas in your back head based on your previous research, where you also have some papers to show, like for the feasibility, and just make the ideas. And we will come to how to make the idea work. But it's good to have an idea for the personal and small travel grants, but for other calls, don't start with the idea. Yeah.
Emilio? Maybe.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think so. The way it works for me in general, I try to have a document with ideas for papers and a document for ideas for grants. In general, for grants, it's less useful in the sense that most of the grants I apply are ideas that I feel very excited about it, so I don't need to write them on a document. They're always on my head. In general, I think I just have multiple. The way it works for me, at least, is that I have multiple ideas in my head that are things that I really like to do, and then I keep an eye to those newsletters that Yolanda was mentioning before. And when I see a suitable call, I jump into it. But it's important to emphasize how critical it is to fit the call, basically. So just the fact that you have an idea doesn't mean that you should throw at everything with that. Just wait until the right moment comes, and you can look at the calls are sometimes new, but often they repeat themselves from previous years, so you can look at what is the best fit from the historical proposals. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I would say I agree. Having a good bunch of ideas, macroscopic ideas, it's important, because then you can always fish them back. Maybe for the personal grants, it's better that you start with your own idea and the correct support for the idea. Because you may have a good idea, but then it's good to also, especially in personal grants, that you can show that there is support from other established professors. You're going to do a specific stay, or you're going to do a specific interaction, and that's always positive, right? So thinking of your own ideas, I think is fine. Reading then the proposals, I think for big, that's typical for big calls, more than personal grants. There are very specific requirements that are specifically addressing that specific call. For personal grants, that's normally not the case, as far as I know. Maybe there are some specificities, but typically they are more open because they want to grant you, right? Well, there are domains. So it's good then that you think of your domain based on your idea. So for instance, in some of the personal grants, you can have a domain that is more applied engineering, and at the same time, the same topic in a different way, with a different flavor, could be more on applied, more on fundamental understanding. So it's on the same call, right? So then you need to think, well, where does your profile, as Emilio was saying, and where does your idea fit better? And I think that from what we saw, most of you are more interested in the first type of grants. So early stage individual grants is the core target, as far as we understand.
And there, typically, you can have support of your group, but if your group do not have or cannot support you, actually you can reach your network or being in a mentoring program that will actually help you in this kind of how do I start there? And so basically it can make very nicely the link as well about, do you need fantastic idea always to write a grant, or how do you sell your idea? So do we always need this wow factor, or can we actually start from a very basic idea, which means that, oh, we did this research on this material and we would try to extrapolate on another one, which is as well very interesting. But so the marketing is actually very important. So how do you do that?
You start this time, Emilio? You have to be varying a bit.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would recommend. I think establishing a network is, of course, important. I think in general, it's also very country dependent, but a lot of the countries, and this includes the UK, a lot of the reviewing is done nationally, which I don't think is a good idea, but it means that it could be more influence of politics, and by this I mean network and the people you know. So whether we like it or not, those things are there. So I think it's important, to travel, to meet people, take advantage of conferences. Conferences are fantastic to, get new ideas, but also to meet new people and to expand your network, basically. And I think this also applies to industry, of course. We have seen that success rates in, I would say, fundamental calls are becoming smaller and smaller, and often require a significant effort. While sometimes industry calls, if you find the right industry partner to your ideas or to your expertise, you just write the one page and they'll give you the same amount of money, no hassle. I mean, you still need to deliver something for them, so don't be too cocky about what you can do. But I think it's another opportunity that you can explore. So you need to know who your partners could be in both proposals and in terms of industry, but also you need to know who your reviewers might be as well. So it's good to understand a little bit how the field moves and expand your network.
Yolanda, maybe?
Okay, so idea marketing. So I have 4 tips here. So the first is you need to have a problem statement. You need to be really clear what is the problem you want to solve. And that goes for all projects, fundamental to applied, right? So problem statement is extremely important. Give examples, give a story, and use references for the problem. For example, corrosion. We have a huge economic burden, blah, 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 reference, right? So that's extremely important. It doesn't have to be long, but it's very important to start with that. The next is you have to know the leading research groups in that area. You have to be honest about what has already been done. So you need to put your idea into context of the research field. If you don't do that, it comes across like arrogant or that you don't know the field. So you have to, okay, this people have pioneered, or this research has already been done, and they showed this. And then the next is you have to identify the gap. So despite of all those great research groups that have done all this great research, there is still a gap, and this is this. And then the 4th step is you solve it. So if you follow this problem, which research groups, what is the gap, and how to solve it, you can market almost any idea. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on which reviewers do you face, right? Because to that, maybe you need to still highlight the relevance of your solution, because it could be that the other researchers in the group, in the world, I mean, did not address that topic because it's totally irrelevant. So finding a gap is maybe not the best strategy per se, right? I think, but I've been always more of a defender of this. I think that the world of funding has been changing towards too much blah blah. I think the curiosity-driven questions are still the best. Myself, and for personal grants, I still think these are the best. Whether they are applied or they are very fundamental, this is the best. To me, and I try to always do like this. Yeah,
I think I can add something there.
Dependent.
Sorry, yeah, no. I just wanted to say that my answer was more focused on how you market yourself to be a visible figure. But in terms of marketing the proposal or how to give it shape, I think what has been said is critical. And I think since most of you are interested in more like postdoc fellowships, these kind of things, I think what I normally tell the people in my group that are applying for this is that you always need to answer this kind of the why questions, right? Why is this important? And this connects with what Yolanda and Santiago were saying. So both the big picture, but also understanding, okay, if this is so important, why no one has solved it so far? What is your good idea? And I think I really like, again, Santiago is right that there's a lot of blah, blah, blah these days, but I think hopefully there's still some of us there that like the hardcore science, so to say. So it's good that you can formulate, a clear hypothesis. I think that if I do A, B will happen. And then you have a plan on how you're going to establish that hypothesis, how you're going to test that hypothesis. I still find those projects the most beautiful ones. And I still see them, despite all the blah, 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 getting through. So that's good news, I think, for all of us. Then, of course, you need to answer the why you question. Why are you the perfect person to carry this research? And also a little bit of why your home institution, why you decided to go to Oxford or to ETH or whatever you decided to go. Why is this place the best for you to carry out this research? And then there's also the why now question. That's the last. So why has to be done now? Why cannot wait 5 years? Why it hasn't been done 5 years ago? So normally there is some sort of exciting, innovative methodological development that allows you to finally tackle that question. I think that will be my advice on there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the why question is always important and is always required. At least in Switzerland, for the personal grant, you have to answer exactly this for why.
Yeah. I think maybe I do agree. Maybe one thing of what Emilio was mentioning, because that's maybe relevant to realize when you are doing your PhD. Certain grants require a strategy that has been built in years. And this is interesting because when I did it, I never thought of that when I did my PhD. That was totally out of interest or even existence around me. Interest from sprung, maybe me. But what I mean with this is that there are certain grants, like for instance, you think of applying to some of the European personal grants. I mean, nowadays and I think it goes back to something, I don't know who mentioned it, Yolanda or Emilio, if going to the very good groups, yeah, okay. You can do extremely good research in a not very well-known group. Let me start there because maybe you are also doing in maybe not that well-known groups, but your research is fantastic. So I think we should stop looking at that much. I think it's the quality of your research that you are able to do is very, very important. But it is true that in certain grants, then coming from certain places, like if you go to European Union and you try to go for one of these personal grants, if you have not been at some point, and that's mobility that someone was mentioning, at some point in one of the top universities in rankings in the world or in the US, whatever university, then your chances decrease. And you just need to look at who gets the grants. And then you will see that stays of 1 year in the US or stays at the specific high top universities in Europe, these are a must. And this you can only do it if you plan it properly, because if not, then the moment of applying it, you are already not able to do it. That's it. So think about these things also. I would say also the profiling yourself publications. So there is nowadays, at least in the Netherlands, a lot of push. Oh yeah, publishing, not too much. We shouldn't publish that much. It's overrated. Well, not publishing is also a very bad strategy. So in your PhD, having at the end of your PhD with 1 or 2 articles is not the best strategy to go for personal grants, right? But of course, also not publishing at very low reputed journals. So it's better to go into some good reputation journals, not necessarily with high impact factor, but good reputation, which is not necessarily the same. So planification, I think that is important.
Well, just like to clarify that what I said about the importance of going to top places doesn't mean that people working in other places do low quality research by any means, of course. I just wanted to clarify that I think it's a good idea to have that, seal of quality in your CV. People value those things in the same way that, it's more likely you'll play for the Spanish national football team if you play for Madrid or Barcelona. There's more visibility, whatever reason. There's a reason why those places are good. But this doesn't mean, of course, that the quality of the research is worse in other places. And of course, there's wonderful people everywhere, and you should, do good research wherever you are. I'm just saying, if the opportunity comes to spend some time. Those places, in my experience, after being in various locations, those places tend to have something special to it, that they attract people from all over the world. They're very international. They have very good resources. So it's not a bad idea to spend some time there because it could be valued later on. But of course, by any means, that you can see many successful people have very different careers. I just say, now that you have the possibility, if you can go to a top place, go. But this doesn't mean that elsewhere they're not doing research. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so that was for idea marketing. So when you have an idea, I will say it's about how do you tell it and how do you sell it. But it's also like for which type of grant should you apply, or was it what is the best as an early career to focus on high risk grant, like so high risk, high reward, or is it better to go for something a bit more like a safe? So this is basically the feasibility versus risk. So what will be your recommendation there? Santiago, do you want to start?
I love because, okay, yeah. Yeah, I guess that it depends also on the moment of your career, right?
We are focusing on early career here.
Correct. So if you're in your PhD, then all of them, all the codes that will be there will be very competitive, right? That I think. So all have, in that sense, high risk. Now, depending on your idea, I think that if you are in your earliest stage and you take a too high risk project, then it can be perceived as very extremely high risk, unlikely to succeed.
So when we talk about high risk, it's just kind of your idea is fantastic, but basically there is no proof so far. So basically no one did it before, and so you really cannot prove that it will work. So it's a high risk, high reward, because if it succeeds, then it's wow, you have a breakthrough. But if it doesn't, then you're left with kind of negative result, which are very good result anyway. Yeah. But it's not. That is what we mean with high risk.
Correct. I think but that's maybe one of the problems of this terminology, because if you write something that you know already the outcome, why would you write any proposal for that? That for me, that is a problem that we're facing nowadays in the granting proposals. If you give the projects to those things that you already expect the outcome, and you know for certainty, high certainty, what is the outcome, yeah, it is not what I would say a good top science, right? I think the uncertainty is an intrinsic part of projects. What happens is that the evaluators are not all scientists also. In most of the proposals, you have evaluators that can be consultants, can be from industry, can be from many different places. And then they give different perspectives to research. And that means that there is no guarantee that one or the other proposal will actually, also a high risk or a low risk, in a specific same call will be the winning one. I think you have to submit proposals that you feel very comfortable with in terms of execution, but that they still challenge you. And in terms of the topic, how much you like it. So you may actually like it a lot, then go for it. Maybe you're maybe you're successful, and then you will really have a lot of fun. If you write a proposal that you don't like, you really don't want it to be granted. So focus on you wanting and liking a topic. That's what I think that is, for these personal grants, very important. Yeah.
Maybe I can continue then. So, so except when you have industry grants where the industry partner comes to you and says, I want to have this tested, and the outcome is basically clear already, that's the only exception. But normally all proposals have this really sensitive balance between feasibility, risks, novelty, relevance, and impact. And so here's my advice. So we said previously, you have to identify a research gap. So this is automatically your novelty, right? So this gap, because this gap is existing, your proposal is novel. But now it is difficult to fill this gap. This is why nobody did it, right? But now you have the knowledge or expertise or equipment that, and this is to the why now question, right? That enables you to answer this, to fill this gap. So this is the high risk, and this is why it's needed now. And then you need to state why you can do it anyway. So this is because you have this specific new expertise or the specific collaboration with this other lab, or you're bridging two countries or bridging two labs, or you have a new methodology developed that now you can answer this question, right? So this is, and then you have to state how relevant it is. So if you're answering any random research gap that nobody cares about, that's a problem. You still have to say why it is relevant and how it is relevant, and that gives you the bridge to stating why your research has a big impact. So even if it's a fundamental research, it might have a big impact in the future, right? So you always have to finish with a big impact statement, and not only why it is a big impact, but also how you will implement it. So don't stop saying, I have answered this research question. Say, now you will publish it. You will make it available to the research community. You will give it to the right stakeholders. That can be associations, the public, the industry, whatever, a special industry conference or magazine. You have to have an implementation plan. And that can also be only 1 or 2 sentences, but it has to be there. Yeah, so that was my advice to that. Yeah.
To give, like, at the moment, for instance, in Europe, it's good to put your proposal in the frame of you will not solve, but you will actually go towards one of the sustainable goals that were defined by the European Union. So we have 17 sustainable goals that were defined. So it's good always to mention how your proposal fits or align with these goals, because it's where European Union and other countries like Switzerland and the UK that are not there anymore, but we align towards these goals still. And it's good to have this in mind as well. Where is the society going and how your proposal fit there? Emilio, do you want to add something?
I think that the points that Santiago and Yolanda made were very good. I fully agree on those. I think, so I don't think there's much to add. I would just emphasize again the point of tailoring your proposal to the call in a way. So just be careful. You know, some high risk ideas will fit very nicely in some calls. In fact, you wouldn't make it without a high risk idea. But if you are, you know, applying for something for industry, then you need very clear deliverables, and you need to know in advance what is most likely to happen, I would say. So just keep that in mind, of course. Always read the call carefully, see what other people have funded before, ask your colleagues what type of research is being funded in this call. Sometimes, you know, the instructions can be very diplomatic, and you need to read between the lines. So this is important to familiarize yourself with the call and figure out, tailor the level of risk and the level of ambition to what is being funded.
Yeah, and so it's a good transition to the writing strategies. So there, as we mentioned already, there are different ways of writing a grant. Most at early career stage, you will mostly focus on personal grants, but there are also collaborative ones. And the writing strategy there are different. So maybe we can focus mostly on the personal, but having a bit of insight about how do you do a collaborative grant. Yolanda, do you want to start there?
Yes, so for the personal, it's generally easier to write. It's also easier to start with, but the most important is your profile, right? So if you don't have a paper in a certain area, it's usually, you should still go for the personal ones where you maybe have a high chance, like where there are a few applications or a travel grant or something, but the highly competitive ones, you really need to work on your profile. It can be hard to write positive about yourself. That's a common thing in almost every scientist believe they are not good enough, right? So so you have to do some research on yourself, maybe follow your impact of your work, not only citations, but also maybe this work has been implemented in this company, has been cited in a patent. So try to find those metrics. There are a number of ways to do that. And that again gives you hard proof that you actually, your profile is good, and you have to work on that as well. So it can be hard to know but you have to market yourself. And then get mock reviewers. You need reviewers, people that you trust, that are able to look at your proposal, so give it enough time for them to give you feedback, and always check it against the criteria and give it time for revision. Even if it's just a small travel grant, don't write it the evening before. This was for personal, and then for collaborative. So it requires much, much more time than personal ones. So usually I start big collaborative grants 1 or 2 years in advance. And so it is also much more difficult. You have many meetings, you have a lot of revisions. The first draft is usually completely looking different than the last. It is a tricky one. Usually in a collaborative grant, all the different people try to get in their research in your grant. And it's sometimes difficult to know whom to believe or whom to trust. You have to check your proposal against the criteria regularly. And don't be afraid to completely change it. You have to know every team member. If you are leading a collaborative grant, you have to integrate every team member's expertise in it. So it's more like knowing the others than marketing an idea or yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
they've said almost I would say almost everything. But I think maybe one of the things that we were discussing about writing proposals, and that's a maybe I would say a reality check. That is, if you don't like to write and to explain things in a written manner, then it's going to be very difficult, right? Writing proposals, because then you need to think of writing, I don't know, 30 pages, 15 pages, depends on the call. That makes sense in every single sentence. So you can train this, right? But the sooner you start training it, the better. That's again going back to the article writing. Even if writing proposals is different.
You can train ChatGPT as well nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays that's indeed one of the I would say game changers. So we don't know, I think, as a community, how these things like ChatGPT is going to affect all the funding system. But yeah, it will make then the texts always way better and all whatnot. So you could already see it in joint proposals, large proposals, consortia. When the consortia was helped by an external company in the writing, then you could already see it directly compared to those proposals that were written by the people that wanted to do the research, right? Big differences. Also with personal grants, we already saw it. So yeah, it will have an impact. But I prefer not to say anything about ChatGPT more than that.
I will just add as well that utilize, if you're lucky enough at your university to have a research office, utilize it. Because I know, for instance, in Australia, they can review not only kind of your colleague, but the research office can review your proposal as well, which they will check already, and they will tell you what is missing or what you have to improve, because they are actually used to submit such grant. The drawback is that you typically have to submit your proposal 1.5 months before the deadline. And so you have to be really kind of plan it carefully in advance. But it's utilize all the tools that your university or network is offering, because it counts a lot in the balance. Emilio, maybe do you have another comment?
No, I agree with those points. I think I always end up writing the grants at the last minute, so that's not a good example to follow. I think it's very good advice to start writing early. And I think the other point I will emphasize, and sometimes I see it, is this thing of giving it to people to review. I mean, people are busy. Maybe they don't want to spend time reviewing carefully your grant, but if you're lucky enough to have a network of people that can review your grant, not only research office in particular, because they have seen many grants, but also colleagues, this is very, very useful, particularly colleagues who have sat in panels and seen many of these grants or been writing grants for many years. I think this is very useful. And sometimes I find colleagues or more junior people who tell me, oh, sometimes people feel very protective of their ideas. They put a lot of thought into it. They feel, okay, this is my really, really good idea, and I don't want 20 people to read my amazing idea. And we all think our ideas are amazing, but nothing is going to happen. At least I've never seen anyone stealing any idea from a friend, or maybe I'm a bit naive, but I think in general there's much more to win by sharing things around than to keep it to yourself. So don't be afraid with share things with people. It's really the feedback is much more important than the small, tiny risk that someone will ever steal your idea. And it's good that people work on your ideas anyway. So I think that's bad. If people want to steal my ideas, they're welcome to do so.
Yes. So I think we can maybe open the floor to more specific question, unless you have some tips that you still want to share. Okay.
Maybe I can say two. Maybe I can say two generally, if I may.
Go for it.
I thought it was important to emphasize. I think the first one is that one has to be ready for rejections and not take it personal. So many of these grants have 10, 15, 20% rate of success, and we all think that we are the best, and those success rates do not apply to us, but they do. I mean, everyone is good and everyone is competitive, and there are many circumstances. Santiago spoke about the luck, what reviewers you get, how the panel member woke up on that precise day, and so on, whether you get someone who's very cranky or you get someone who's very supportive of everything. So we need to be ready for rejections, and sometimes people take it too personal, or they submit a grant and they are nervous for months about the outcome of that grant. I think the best attitude is to just submit, assume it's rejected, keep on going on with your life, and then if it comes positive, that's a happy time. But don't take it too personal. Don't think it says anything about your career, anything about your capabilities as a researcher, nothing at all. I mean, all the strong people that all the scientists that you admire have gotten a lot of grant rejections. I think you just need to keep applying and keep applying and keep applying. I think the other one maybe that I would say is that sometimes people ask me whether, because there's always a balance. If I spend, particularly, for example, postdoc fellowships, there might be 5 schemes, and they say, oh, if I spend the most productive time at the end of my PhD just writing these proposals because it's a new experience, I need to read a lot and so on, it's going to take time out of publishing papers. So where's the balance between maintaining my profile competitive or writing proposals? And it's a bit difficult to know. I mean, you want to have a conversation with someone who's honest and can look at your profile and say, here are your chances. I think in case of doubt, I would recommend going for it. There's always this element of luck, as Santiago was saying. So sometimes even if you feel, okay, the people I know, all the people that I know who got grant X had this very exciting profile that I may not have, this doesn't mean necessarily that you'll get rejected. So I think in case of doubt, I will encourage people to apply for things. Of course, don't leave completely the research aside, but hopefully you can do it in an efficient way. Maybe for postdoc fellowships, you can recycle the same idea if it's suitable for multiple calls. And don't get too much of this imposter syndrome thinking, I'm not good enough for this or something. I think in case of doubt, unless someone tells you, you need to wait, I think it's a good idea to go for it. Yeah. That was all that I wanted to say.
And I think what we did not discuss as well so far is it's not only finding people to read your proposal, but as well what helps sometimes is to see some successful proposal or that were submitted to the call. Most of the people within your institute or within your network will happily share with you. Also grants that were rejected, because then you have the feedback of the reviewer as well, why it has been rejected. So it can give you already some tips about what is, because sometimes just the criteria is so generic that you do not really know what they want. So having some template is useful as well. Yolanda, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I want to really echo Emilio, because it's really important to not get frustrated. I have submitted more than 500, I think about 600 applications, and maybe 100 to 150 were approved or granted. So my own success rate is about average. And the success reason is mainly that I write a lot of proposals, and I did that in 3 languages in 3 continents. So it's really but especially for positions and highly competitive grants, the main reason why you might be rejected might be that they have a favorite person, right? And you can't influence this. you just have to keep trying and try to understand the politics behind everything. But there are a lot of factors you cannot influence. There is not a reason why you were rejected. There might be a reason why someone else got it, right? So don't think about just keep going, try to understand more, try to learn from it if possible. Yeah.
And also from the European funding, let's face it, like you can have very good grades. So we had a proposal that were graded 97 out of 100, but they only funded the first 5 and we were ranked 30th. So it's kind of, it's a luck thing. So sometimes it just as well, there is not enough funding for your proposal to be funded. It's as easy as that. Santiago, you wanted to add something?
No, well, I was laughing because of the some of the some of the feedback that you can get from reviewers might really not resonate in what you have written. It might be totally incomprehensible. Why? Yeah, that's part of what we see. Not all reviewers have sufficient time to review properly. Not all reviewers have sufficient knowledge to do it. It's true. Because the fields are very, very broad, and you cannot have full knowledge on everything, and the factor luck is there. So I think that the frustration, and I say like, yeah, don't get frustrated, like Emilio was saying and Yolanda, but even if I would frustrate again, so if it is rejected with idiotic comments, then it still is frustrating. But you know, you're not alone. So the point is that many researchers that are in different stages, they have gone through that and they are still going through that. And if they may be more successful than you or equally successful, but they show it more. So just you are not alone. That's basically maybe one of the messages here. And keep on trying. But I'm very curious to see if there are more specific questions from the audience at this stage, and then we can always do a last round. But